Okay, folks, thanks for joining us in this panel. The title is Fireside Chat, Rethinking Reach, Technology, Audiences, and the Future of Media. I think of it as a secret podcast I've started with Renard that doesn't get published anywhere because every conversation we had over the summer trying to come up with what the topics were going to be, we just ended up talking for an hour. And they were great conversations. And it was basically for an audience of one, Josh, who works for me. So we thought we'd bring it out live and just make it a piece. Maybe we'll start, and Renard, for those who aren't familiar with your background, just do a quick introduction of yourself and the work you've done.
I'm Renard Jenkins. I am the president and CEO of I2A2 Technology Studios and Labs, former, I should say, not former, but past president, immediate past president of the Society of Motion Picture Television Engineers, the color bars people. And I'm also the vice president of Hollywood Professional Association in my copious free time. Been in the business a while. I consider myself to be a recovering studio executive. And a really curious person when it comes to creativity and technology.
Now, I think you glossed over too many roles in there because there are a lot, but I think they're going to come out and emerge. You basically had a front row seat in the work that went on in evolution of film, evolution of broadcast, and really the invention of streaming. And if you throw in podcasts and radio, I think that's in the mix as well. So first question is sort of what patterns stand out when you think about how audience behavior has evolved across all of those various mediums?
Yeah, it's real interesting because they each have a very different path that they've taken. When I think about what happened with radio, the thing with radio is that there's always been like all these great technological advances in radio. However, the medium by which we actually enjoy radio has never really changed.
Right.
So you have all of this really cool tech happening, but you don't really see it and see the impact of it like we do on the visual side. So when you start talking about the impact of television, we were sort of in this race for resolution. Everybody wanted to see how far could we go, how much resolution can we get. We got to the point now where we are beyond what the human eye actually can perceive. So now what's the next thing? Okay, now the next thing for television, it's got to be luminant. So then we start talking about HDR. And everybody's like, oh, it's got to be luminant, so we get into HDR and so forth. And then, the full experience has to have audio. Mm-hmm. So now we got to get to next gen audio. The audiences for that is what I find to be very interesting. Audiences that are probably in the areas of about 32 and below. Mm-hmm. They want it where they want it when they want it. Mm-hmm. Okay, they have never lived in a lifetime where it had to be scheduled. They came into the world of a la carte.
Right.
Those of us who are in the, say, 50 and above, we were begging for a la carte throughout the entire experience known as the cable wars. Oh, if I didn't have to be tied to this base layer, if I could just actually have the channels I want, and that's it.
No more appointment TV.
That's it. No more appointment TV. And it's really funny because I talk with people who are in my age range, and now they're like pining for that. They're like, wow. I remember when must-see TV was a thing. I remember when I wanted to actually go on a Friday night, and before I go out, I'm gonna watch my device. Those were the types of things that our generation seems to, it's almost like nostalgia's pulling us back. But then you get into the streaming world and the ability to have so much stuff thrown at you that it gets overwhelming. I often think of streaming and just the streaming environment in itself as sort of like the Cheesecake Factory menu. There's like so much stuff that it takes a long time for you to decide what you're gonna do. I can tell you from experience, my wife and I have sat in the basement looking at the television, going through trailers.
Right.
For an hour. And then it's like, I'm tired, I don't really want to watch anything. So there's the differences, but then with younger people, they will watch something for a brief period of time and say, okay, I don't like that, and they'll move on.
Right. They're very unforgiving.
Yeah,
It doesn't hold it.
They're just like they're done. And then there are those of us who grew up being told that we had to finish our plate. You gotta clean your plate. So you start watching something, it can be horrible.
But you're gonna finish
You're
it.
gonna finish it because you know. And me, my curiosity takes over. I'm like, I gotta know how bad was this writer? How bad did this actually end up? I want to see the rest of it. So those types of things are actually changing the way that we look at not just the demographics, but also the way that we look at content engagement. And what is it that what effort are we going to put into trying to actually reach those particular audiences, and how do you actually do that through storytelling?
Do you think as part of that too, the story changes from device to device? In other words, that payload, that package of whatever the media is, may not be the same on the phone as it is on the screen, as it is on my laptop or other things. So it's device specific, it might be time of day specific, or whether I'm watching it with friends or family or by myself sitting in a hotel somewhere, right?
Oh, that is definitely the case. And any of you who have gotten caught up in the microdramas, if you've gotten caught up in a microdrama, you understand. That is really meant for your phone.
Right.
Okay, they're feeding these things vertically. They are giving you 1 to 2 minutes. They are doing the old soap opera hook and ladder. They get you every single time. You get to the end of it, and and you're like, okay, all right, I've watched this, and you're like, oh, wait a minute. If the teenage vampire is now entering into the mix, I've got to pay this extra $1 to see what happens for the next 2 minutes. And before it's all over, these things are they're like 90 episodes.
Right.
And it all equates to about an hour and a half of your time. But by the end of it, you spent $30 to $40 of tokens to watch something that you wouldn't spend $30 to go to the theater to watch.
Univision is testing this out right now, and Nicole Williams talked about it this morning. Their version is called Micros.
Yes.
And they are absolutely using the telenovela model to put these out and package it specifically for the younger audience. Mm-hmm. She said the under 30 crowd are the people who are going to watch it.
Well, I think she may be underselling it.
Right.
Because to be honest, like I said, I got caught up in one, and I can easily be swayed with animation. So if any of you are trying to sell me anything, you just make it a cartoon. I'll probably pay attention. And so what I found is that when they started doing the ones that are animated, and it didn't really even matter what the subject matter was. It was just like, oh wow, and you just it really plays on our desire to complete something, but it also does a really good job of giving you a dopamine rush right before the end.
Right.
About 30 seconds before they go to the next thing, it really pulls you in.
Let's stay in the area of micro, but let's move over to engagements and talk about sort of the metrics that are driving things. Nielsen is antiquated information at best. Survey groups and focus groups are still being used, but they're very blunt tools that are part of it. Mm-hmm. Sort of what is replacing engagement metrics, and how are we using engagement metrics to drive what we watch and shape what we watch?
I often tell people that Nielsen had the best business model in the world. We're going to take your data and we're going to sell it back to you.
Right.
And that was just genius. Nobody wants to do that anymore. People want direct data. They have their own data science teams in place. The smart companies have their own data science teams in place. And what they are doing is actually understanding at a deeper level, what does the data actually tell you? The other thing is that we talk about micro expressions and things of that nature, and micro patterns. Those are the things that are actually driving more of the content engagement to shape the way that we are starting to tell stories.
How does that work exactly?
I'm glad you asked. So when you're thinking about micro patterns, all right, it's not just what individuals are watching. It's when are they actually watching it, and how long are they staying engaged with those particular topics. So with sports, generally if it's a live sports event, people generally watch from the pre-show until the end. Post shows don't get as much play as the pre-show. It's sort of like, you get the rush and then you kind of have that drop and everything kind of starts to drive down. And if you're a Raider fan like me, you don't want to watch post show because you're just going to hear out the team lost. But that's sort of, that starts to develop that pattern, okay? But then you start to look at the traditional metrics of, okay, who was watching that? So generally with sports, believe it or not, there is a large growing number of women who watch live sports, and they don't just watch your traditional baseball, basketball, football, okay? Women's college volleyball is amazing. Well, one, it's amazing to watch. They're just crazy athletes. But the growth of that particular sport is just through the roof right now. They also have new professional leagues for volleyball as well, for women's volleyball. And these are national leagues that are actually pulling in great ratings. And then you would think, oh, it's women's, just like women's basketball, when it started, everybody was like, oh, it's WNBA, nobody's gonna watch. Now, you see that people are actually getting engaged because there's more of the star power there.
Right, tightly.
However, what's interesting is that with women's basketball, people are not watching full games. They're coming in at various times. They're not watching the full games. And that's an interesting pattern to take a look at and say, well, why is that happening? But the overall average of the audience is pretty much staying consistent.
Is it driven by interest in individual athletes versus the overall game, just because the teams are so new, maybe, or is it something different?
We through our research, we haven't actually figured out what it is. I would lean to believe that it could be the star power, but when you have that star power across a league that really has probably about 12 to 13, LeBrons or Jordans,
sure,
you're going to have sort of that sort of bifurcation of your audience in itself.
Yeah.
They're just it's gonna spread out, and I think that may be, but like I said, we haven't finished the research to be able to tell.
So, as part of the metrics area, recommendations come up a lot. Recommendation engines are a big piece. They've become kind of the default UI because we broke discovery. With streaming. So.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, streamers.
Yeah, you're welcome. There's also a problem with recommendation engines that you can fall into a trap of your comfort zone. You're only watching, you're just reinforcing the middle constantly as part of it. So how should personalization evolve to keep that wild card discovery in the mix so that I'm finding the new things and I'm finding a new audience for my content?
Yeah, what's good about the recommendation model is that it does allow you to sort of discover, things that you most likely would like, that you most likely would not have run into. Like me finding, a Nigerian comedian that I had no idea of who they were or anything like that was based off of the fact that I was watching more international, content. Because I do work in that particular space, and so I wanted to get more acclimated to what was happening there. And also Nollywood has had this incredible resurgence right now, and they're kicking out a lot of content. Not all of it good, but they are kicking out a lot of content.
And amazing sci-fi stuff.
Oh yeah, amazing sci-fi. It's crazy. It's crazy. Everybody in Nigeria wants to go to space. It's some fun stuff to really get into. So what I was really like leaning towards with all of this is that while the algorithms can get you to a certain place, the problem with that is it does create that echo chamber. And once that echo chamber starts, it's really hard to retrain your algorithm with any of these existing streamers, unless you essentially just turn it off, use a new email address, and start a new account. What I think would actually help is that every now and then they have to start to look at, once again, the micro patterns. Okay, now you may be watching this, but let's try and dig into why you're watching this, when you're watching this, and for how long, using those three parameters, and then try and guide you to something else that may not be solidly in line with that, but it may have some aspects of what that has, but it takes you into a different genre. I think we have to sort of do that to shock the algorithm. And if we can do that kind of thing, or if someone wants to build that algorithm, I think you're going to start to see more people more engaged for a long period of time. Because I get bored with even the stuff I like.
Right.
You know, and that's one of the things that I will go in, especially with YouTube. I do this all the time with YouTube. If you don't know, you can go into YouTube and you can actually look at where it shows all the things that you've been watching and things that you tend to sort of lean towards, and delete them. And just totally delete them and move them out of your algorithm and then start over again. And so I do
It's
that.
like recommendation bankruptcy.
Yes, exactly. Just kind of go in and try and clear out the, you know, you can clear the history, but you know, the history never really goes away. We know that. But if you go in and you kind of say, oh, it says, oh, comedy, and you're like, oh, I'm not a comedy. You just click that off and it'll start to bring up new things. I think we need to have that same kind of ability in some of the streamers as well. Be able to say, you know, yeah, Eddie Murphy, I love you, but I want to see something else that's not Kevin Hart.
Yeah,
No shade on Kevin Hart. I work with some of these people.
I think as recommendation engines mature, I think there has to be room to promote something that's outside of the bias that it's pushing in your direction, and
Oh, yeah.
and it becomes healthy because it gives you something to push back against. Like you can always skip it if you don't like it. It's real easy to get out of it, but having it sort of put into the plate as part of the rotation helps you evolve the patterns that you're looking at.
Yeah, on you know, I won't call out the streamer's name because we're not here to promote anyone, but I started watching Bewitched because I was just like, oh, having one of those nostalgic times where you just kind of go, oh, I want to watch something that I always know. So I started watching Bewitched, and then I Love Lucy started to appear, and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that one, and then it really got so bad, like The Honeymooners were showing up, all of these really old shows, and I was like, okay, well, I kind of want to kind of see something new, so I went to The Bionic Woman, so I could at least get into the 70s, and then once I got to The Bionic Woman, then it started. I mean, it's really funny how these things how they work. It's so simplistic that it can actually be extremely limiting. And I think from a streamer standpoint, they've got to understand how to think sort of not linearly. Unfortunately, I think is the best way when we talk about these algorithms. You've got to actually think a little non-linearly. And it gets back to, you know, each one of these elements of storytelling or what it is that I'm interested in. You know, with Bewitched, it's like, okay, you're going to have the comedy, you're going to have the physical comedy, you're going to have the sight gags, you're going to have, you know, a little bit of, you know, the whole Technicolor style and everything that went along with it.
A lot of mid-century.
Yeah,
modern.
you know, mid-century modern and what was I forgot the designer's name, but Bob Mackie. You're going to see a lot of the Bob Mackie stuff and all that kind of stuff. But what else was going on there? Well, you had Rhoda, you had, you know, that comes later, you had Mary Tyler Moore, all these types of things that are sort of a natural pattern, but the algorithm doesn't always find that. You know, it's only thinking, okay, you want something that has to do with either Elizabeth Montgomery, or you want something that has to do with, I forgot the woman who played Endora, but, you know, all of a sudden I would start getting their previous work.
Right.
And it's a linear thought pattern when we need to be thinking non-linear.
Let's shift over a little bit on provenance and ethics for a minute. So provenance has come up a lot, particularly in the world of AI and media. What do you think about building provenance into creative pipelines so that we know sort of from the starting point with content where it comes from? Like, where does the responsibility lay? Where are we with it today? Because we're in a very early stage, but where do you see it progressing, and what's your hope for how it gets adopted?
That's a heavy question. I think I'll start with my hope. My hope is that we will get to the point where every piece of material that is used for a model has some sort of watermark. You know, some way to track its origin.
Right.
I would love for that to be
The
sort of
provenance.
that to be the goal. Like I would love for that to be there. Now, we're not there right now, as you know. There's lots of things that are being used for models that were not tagged correctly even during their origin. So that creates this space and essentially creates a business for individuals who are interested in creating rich metadata and finding a way to create rich metadata that will follow an asset without actually disturbing the asset itself. You can add in watermarks, you can do audio tagging and all of that kind of stuff, but in some cases that can take away from the asset, or it can be visible in places where you don't want it to be visible. That causes problems further in the pipeline. So we have to actually get to the point where we have that sort of as a base, and then we move through the process to make sure that it cannot actually be deteriorated or changed or moved or removed throughout the process of actually being a part of a model and generating something new. That portion of whatever was used to create that something new, that needs to travel as well. We did it the same. We did sort of this thing with IDER throughout the process, where IDER is, once it's there, it's there. And while it's not a human readable code, if you decipher it on the back end, you can track where things have been. We need that same type of thing within this AI space right now. I think that it is incredibly important. And also, I am a artist-friendly person when it comes to engineering and technology, so I always think of artists first. I believe that that should also be the way that we're using sort of this tracking mechanism, whether it's blockchain and the ledger and auditing and so forth or not. We need to be using that to monetize the individuals who are responsible for those assets. I think that's the only fair business model in this space where everything is kind of out there. Now, I do know that in China and in Japan right now, it's wide open. Mm-hmm. They are not looking at it that way at all. It's like, everything's fair use.
Right.
Our fair use laws here in the US do not actually allow for that currently. And I think that is to an artist and to the creator's advantage. So yeah, that's kind of the way I think about it. I think provenance is extremely important. And also to be able to tell when something has been organically created mm-hmm. and when something has been generated.
Right.
I think that's very important too, because right now, people thought that, people thought this is the end of photography. This is the end of photography. I can just go and generate a landscape, or I can generate something like that. But what you can't generate are the memories of someone's wedding. You can't generate the memories of someone's birth. So when something is organically created, that needs to be tagged differently. And in our panel yesterday, James Blevins said something that I think is really, really profound. He said that if we get to this place where we can no longer tell what is real and what has been generated through AI, it's going to almost become a premium to be able to put a tag on something that says this was done with live actors. This was done, through
all of a sudden it's bespoke.
Exactly. This is 100% real.
Right.
That's going to become like, a premium, and people will pay for that premium.
Right. Absolutely. Well, I think you kind of just answered my next question, which was around, does it become a creative advantage? And it sounds like it absolutely does.
Yeah, I think so.
As we go through this. So, and I like the way you described provenance and the need to track things, because it's almost more like we need to invent sort of a DNA test for media, where we can extract where the various components came from.
Yes.
Regardless of whether they've passed through a model and weight system as part of what they're doing.
Well, the thing about it is that we have all of the tools in place right now to be able to create that infrastructure. Whether we're looking at lens data, camera data.
So what's stopping us? Why haven't we done it?
And you know what? There are the laws that have to be worked out. And then there's also the willingness of a lot of the gatekeepers to actually hold hands and do something together, instead of creating a competitive edge for themselves by doing things their own way with their own special sauce. If we can get past that, we'll be in good shape. You know, it's almost like, hey, let's go back to the beta VHS war, and you know, and finally, one wins. Now everybody go in that direction.
You said gatekeepers, and that reminded me that you and I have talked about studios and how they are shifting from their gatekeeper role to a distribution house. Can you describe that a little more and then sort of explain your thinking? What drives it, and can they actually make that adaptation?
Yeah, and then you know, I often, you know, I take jabs at studios all the time because it's an antiquated, you know, sort of an antiquated system to me. And being a person who was there and at various high levels within those organizations, I could see how individuals were sort of, they would lean towards a good idea, and then if that good idea kind of rocked the boat a little bit, everybody just kind of said, no, we're going to get back in the boat, we're going to stay, everybody stand still, we're just going to keep things smooth. Right now, if they stay the course of what they have been doing, and trying to become the star makers and trying to become the ones who you have to go to in order to get the big deal, and then they'll distribute it out, they're gonna be pretty much done in, I'm gonna say, probably in the next 5 to 7 years. Because you no longer, you know, the music industry's already shown us this.
Right.
When the music industry was broken, they did not act quick enough to say, hey, guess what? We can create something that's better than Napster. Because we have all the engineers, we have all the money, we can actually create something that we could get our audience back.
Right. They were too busy defending an old business.
Exactly, they were holding on to that old business model. Hollywood right now has to let go of the old business model. You are no longer the gate in which individuals have to go through in order to actually reach large audiences. YouTube has given everybody the opportunity. Vimeo has given everybody the opportunity, you know? You now have things like Illuvio and the Content Fabric that are giving everyone the opportunity to reach large audiences. So you're no longer in that particular power seat.
Right.
Your change now needs to be, okay, what we do have is we have a distribution pipeline that is bigger than YouTube. It's global. It's, you know, it can actually reach eyes and audiences that, because of tariffs and all kind, and I'm not getting political, but because of the way that YouTube has to operate in certain countries and things like that, in certain regions, a lot of the studios don't have that because they've already fought that battle. So they can get into regions and areas that a lot of the streamers cannot right now, even though they're trying. That's their leverage. That's where they become the giant distribution house. That's where you say, okay, I've created all this content. I'm going to license it to a studio for a particular amount of time, or I'm going to do a non-exclusive license. I'm going to license it to everybody. You know, the creators are in the driver's seat, and they don't really know that they have that much power. Because if you continue to think about the old model, you're simply saying, wow, I wish someone would just bless me with a wonderful contract. No, put your stuff up on YouTube. Put your stuff in all these other areas. Start to build your audience. That groundswell will turn into Mr. Beast.
Sure.
And then they're going to be emulating what you do.
Right.
You know, because Fox now has, what is it, the new show that they have with all the little games, and they're trying to get, Kim Jong is the host. I can't even think of the name, but it is a clear attempt to get the audience that Mr. Beast already has. Okay? This whole thing has flipped upside down, and they got to get in front of it, or they will end up, you know, sort of treading water like the music business is.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of people think it's the early conversations, I think, in the creator economy were that the tech platforms were taking over media, but in a way they're just democratizing the infrastructure so
Right.
that the creators can succeed without the studio
Mhm.
model to be in place.
Yeah, and then what does that do? That gives us an incredible amount of really talented people actually having a voice now, you know? And once again, like the beginning of YouTube, there was a lot of not so good stuff there. You know, let's just be honest. I mean, it was crap. But as storytellers got involved, as directors got involved, as comedians got involved, actors got involved, you started to see the content become more quality and more appealing. And once you saw that, then you started to see the eyeballs staying longer. And that's how YouTube has been able to turn the tables on broadcast.
Right. And I think it found not its lane, but it found its visual storytelling method, because it's not a direct mapping of like a 22-minute sitcom
No.
or something else.
No.
It had to find its own language
Mhm.
for how the story gets told, and it's typically, ideally sub 10 minutes, and
Mhm.
in a perfect world, sub 3 minutes.
That's right. That's right. And that is due to the fact that we picked up these phones almost 20 years ago, and all of us have very short attention spans. And that really is an epidemic that has cut across all demographics. Throughout entire, it doesn't matter what age you are, your attention span has decreased over the last 20 years. That's also why you see the rise of mobile gaming,
Right.
because mobile gaming continues to give you that dopamine rush. Like every time you get that Wordle right, every time you get any of the puzzles correct, you're like, oh wow, that feels really good. And then the next thing you keep going and going and going.
And a lot of that is casual gaming, where
Mhm.
I can do it while I'm standing in line at
That's
the bank,
right.
or doing
That's right.
something else.
Yeah.
And I can easily drop it for 2 minutes if I,
Pick
need
it
to.
right back up.
It's not like I'm playing Call of Duty somewhere.
No.
Bringing back the AI component of this, as we think about the creator landscape, it sounds like, from what you're saying, AI, the content creators and the independent creators shouldn't really be that worried about AI replacing them. It sounds like the studios need to be more worried about AI replacing them in the equation for the way things are working.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've gotten in trouble for saying this publicly, but since I've already said it, I'll just
You're
say it.
amongst friends, it's fine.
Yeah, I'll say it again. Look, if you give me 10 years of data on your financials, and you give me 10 years of data on your content performance, all right? You just give me those two metrics. I will create for you an algorithm and an AI large language model that will be a better CFO or a better CEO than we have at any other studios.
Right.
That's all I need, okay? And I can now predict what will actually hit and what will not hit for your particular audience.
Right.
All right? Once again, we gotta think that's linear, okay? What content creators have and where the advantage comes in, and I know people don't really like the term content creator, but I can't think of another way to kind of encompass all of these, these really creative artists who are doing this work. What they have the advantage of is that they are not thinking linearly, because they don't have that sort of data and that sort of performance history holding them back. What they're thinking about is, okay, I have an audience of, say, 10,000 that they like to see us jump off of the garage onto a trampoline, do a flip, and then come back and land. And we, whether we fail or whether we do it, that's our audience. They hone in and dial into that audience. All of a sudden, that audience starts to grow. They grow with that audience. They start to do more risky things and so forth and so on, and it becomes a thing. But they stay within that lane.
Right.
Okay? Studios have traditionally had to try and be all things to everyone. That model is dead.
Right. We are a fragmented audience.
That
now.
is it.
We're niche.
People want hyper personalization.
Right.
And that's where the metrics that we were talking about earlier really come in. It gives you the opportunity to really hyper personalize the experience for individuals based off of what they are watching on. So if someone's watching on their phone, if we were given the permission, as they're walking, down Wilshire, we could actually tell them, hey, by the way, I think you're a little hungry now. You haven't eaten since whatever. There's a bakery shop right around the corner. And by the way, that bakery shop was used in, Sex and the City when they came out west, and then you have all of these things that can then drive people towards a different experience that has not just to do with sort of content consumption, but then it has to do with merchandising, it has to do with purchasing, it has to do with your real life experiences, to experience, these spaces that you've only seen, in the movies. That's a whole different way of thinking about it. Then you throw in AR and XR and VR, and all of a sudden, people are standing there, and there's Miranda right there on her side. And no, I did not watch Sex and the City. My wife does. I just know the names that way.
Okay, look, we keep
I do
secrets
not
here.
watch
Circle of trust, man. Don't worry about it. I've heard you call streaming the canary in the coal mine.
Yes.
I'd love to understand, sort of unpack what you mean by that, and then what comes next after streaming.
Well, first of all, I love streaming. For me, to be honest, I live and breathe it. But as a person who came out of the film world, went into the cable world, and thankfully went back to the film world, what I realized as I saw streaming coming along, and the reason that I called it the canary in the coal mine is because it was telling us linear broadcast in its current state, cable television in its current state, they are dying a slow death. If you are an advertiser and you are staying in that space, you need to be asking for lower prices because the eyeballs are not there.
Right, and they're eroding very rapidly.
They are eroding rapidly. Okay? Streaming showed us that. And it really showed us that during COVID. During COVID, Jason Kylar was head of Warner Brothers, and he said, we know that audiences are at home. We are going to do something that no other studio was doing at the time, which is we are going to go streaming first. And we are going to give you the opportunity to pay a premium price to see what would normally be in a theater in your home. And when he did it, and he rushed out, I think Wonder Woman 84 was the first one, because my team worked on that one, and we were like, oh crud, this is not going to go in the theater, we're not going to make all that money that we were supposed to make, this is going to affect our bonuses at the end of the year. How dare this guy come in from Hulu or wherever he came from and do this? Well, he was a genius, because he did it, and the other studios were all coming at him. It was hilarious to read all this stuff. They were all coming at him like, how dare you, what are you doing, you're destroying our model, blah, blah, blah. And Wonder Woman made money. It made a lot of money.
As a streaming
product. And then, all of a sudden, the others were like, oh, wait, let's try this too. And so then we started getting all these premieres at home, which was good, because COVID was really, that was just sort of a life-changing type of situation. But what it did was it opened up that door. And then, as soon as theaters opened again, everybody started reeling back. Right, reeling back. But as we noticed, it hasn't bounced back fully yet. Now, I love going to the theater. I'm old school. I like the idea of going to the theater and experiencing something in a collective group together. It's always kind of fun. Like Sinners in IMAX, what an experience to sit in the audience and then see people who were like, oh, this is my 5th time seeing it. And, they were just there because of that communal experience. Now, that's wonderful. But when you can sit at home, and as good as televisions have gotten, like I said, about, where the resolution is, where it all is, you've got a nice dark room, you've got a really good sound bar, because you don't even really need to buy a ton of speakers anymore. The sound bars are so good right now. If you tune your room properly, you get a great experience. That in itself showed that, okay, the way that we think about distribution, the way that we think about television, it's gone. Right now, I want to go somewhere, I want to pick what I want to watch, I want to sit back, and I want to have a great experience.
Yeah.
And so that's why I see streaming as the canary, but also see streaming really and truly as a savior. And that's a savior for distribution of content in various ways. And with all of the technology that we have now, it's going to become even more immersive.
So where are we heading in that streaming world? Is it individual channels for each of us? Is it concierge discovery for the entertainment that we want? Or is it something completely different? Is there another direction that it goes?
I think it's all of that, and then there's something that we haven't even thought of.
Right.
I also think that gaming plays a big part of this too.
Sure.
And on linear and so forth, that wasn't necessarily an option. You had to have an external box to do all of that kind of stuff. Streaming actually allows you to be able to integrate all of your favorite things and all your favorite activities into a single, a single device, a single platform, and so forth. So I think yes, it's going to be very personalized, but we have to get the algorithm correct to be able to do that, so we don't create echo chambers where people just walk around and they don't really engage with one another. They're only looking at one single type of content. That creates drones, and I can't remember the movie, but there was a movie like back in the 80s where everybody was walking around looking at these things and they were just walking past each other and no one was interacting. That's not a society I would personally want to be a part of.
No, absolutely not. On the let's sort of stay in that future state, and what does the next 5 years look like to you? And we can tie it to studios and creators, or we can go a different direction with it. But what's the evolution of things look like when we get to a 5-year mark? And we're sitting here talking about this again. I hope. What are we thinking on, and who is the audience at that point? Is it a couple of smaller studios that have survived? Is it a plethora of creators that have come on board? Or is it an independent studio type scenario that lives in between the two, or a collective? I've seen a lot of creator collectives growing. Where does it go? Who's the audience that's here listening to us prattle on about it, and what are the things you think they are starting to think about in that future state?
Yeah, my buddy Thomas Edwards, he and I have spoken together before, and he always tells me, he says, if anybody asks you to predict 5 years from now, tell them they're crazy, because it changes too fast.
Yep.
And there's no way that you can really kind of do it. That said, I would say that the collectives, the AI studios, and specifically the AI studios that are understanding to do both hybrid and AI, and independent studios and content creators in general. That is the future.
That's the audience.
That's the audience that you're going to be really trying to build for and trying to keep engaged. I think that's what we have to look for. I think that, like I said, I think the larger studios will ultimately realize their value as it stands today and make that shift. The danger in that is that I see in making that shift that there may be some shrinkage in human resources in those particular studios. However, I do see that with the opportunity that is being kind of created in all of this space, that there becomes places for those displaced individuals to go with some of these independent studios and some of these other things, because an independent studio can be one person.
Right.
But a really good independent studio is probably going to be around 20, 25 people who know what they're doing and knowing how to do each one of their parts correctly. Because there is value in the studio model and studio pipeline, in the sense that, we have 100 plus year old workflows. Why are they still 100, plus years? Because they work.
Right.
And so that process of creating content, while it's going to get democratized by all the technological advancements, each one of those steps still has to be taken.
Mm-hmm. Good.
So that's my prediction for the future. Don't hold me to it.
I would apparently be an idiot if I think that's right.
According to Thomas, we would all be idiots if we did.
Well, thank you for that, Renard. I appreciate the conversation always, and we have a couple of minutes, so if there's any questions in the audience, we have time to at least take a few that are out there. Yeah, go ahead.
Question, but first a tip. If you want to change up your Netflix discovery, go to your spouse's profile.
Oh yeah, I got in trouble for doing that.
I did that. The only thing is, I did that, and then I got addicted to my spouse's list, and then I totally screwed up her algorithm.
Oh yeah, I did that.
But it was great for me.
Yes, I'm 100% with you. Yeah. However, my wife is from Philly, and that could end not so well for me.
Sure.
Because I did that with the Bewitched thing. I did it on hers first.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah.
Fire everywhere. But I want to ask you about what you think about the mini subscriptions idea. This is a thing that Disney is suing Sling over. So, assuming if it could get done in a legal way, I'm not saying it's not legal, but any thoughts on that as a...
Look, churn is a part of this business. you know, and so I personally think that the mini subscription weight, that would be great for us as users. You know, so I'm all on board with it. I hope they can kind of work their way through it. I don't see that being anything other than just offering another option. You know, so yeah, they got to work through it. But yeah, I'm a fan.
Very good. Any other questions? Pete?
Yeah, this question is more about the content creator's relationship with the audience.
Mhm.
So if we look at music had a similar path where physical media wasn't the thing anymore because streaming made it, you could just get everything.
Mhm.
And so a lot of the audience interaction shifted to live events.
Mhm.
You know, now you go experience the concert,
Mhm.
and that's where you put your money. And do you feel like there's a similar thing that's going to happen with streaming, or has it already happened and it's YouTube and its creators and we're there, or is there going to be a new shift in the relationship with the audience, and how streaming and lack of physical, you know, the two things in common, lack of physical media, scarcity plus streaming equals, in music, equaled concerts.
Right.
In streaming, what does it equal? Are we already there?
You know, that is an amazingly great question, and it really is, because we're almost there. You know, think about the fact that Jake Paul is fake boxing. Okay, I'm just gonna say it. Fake boxing with people, and it's drawing incredible audiences. It's that live thing.
Yeah.
Okay, that is what you're talking about, and it's pulling people into it. All right. Now, one of the things that we, as viewers, what we are going to do is we're going to go for something that really feels organic to us. All right. Concerts feel organic.
Yeah.
What's the next step for, say, Mr. Beast? I like using Mr. Beast because it's amazing to me. Like, you know, guys like 6'5" or something like that, he can't go anywhere in the world without just being mobbed. And he was just this guy creating games and started out like in a garage and so, but people want to be a part of that movement. They want to be a part of that, as Andy Warhol would call it, that happening. And I think that's exactly where we are going to go with all of the AI stuff that's happening. It's great. It's all wonderful, and all the phone streaming stuff on it. It's all wonderful. But when you engage with people in a live event, there's no way to really explain it. There's
So
just
like, do we go back to studio audiences? Like,
I think, you know what? I think we're already there to a certain extent with the studio audiences, because, you know, comedy shows, they're big now.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have people in the little small comedy clubs anymore. You know, they're all doing stadiums. You know, Dave Chappelle at the Hollywood Bowl. You know, that they're doing that kind of stuff. So yeah, I do believe that's where we're going to go. I don't think we're there yet, but I do think we're going to see more of that type of thing. And we know already that Netflix is really trying to build up their live tech stack. They're focused on that right now.
Yeah, they talked a lot about that this morning, and it is that sort of return of the appointment television that we had. And it doesn't all have to be just sports. There are other elements that will come into it. I think about, and this was sort of another post-COVID thing of seeing a lot of like concerts in movie theaters or concerts on streaming services that we hadn't had before, or things like Hamilton coming out.
Yes.
Being able to see the stage play with specific actors that you wanted, or seeing it multiple times with different actors to see what was different in it. I think that becomes the new version of that appointment television. Next question. I saw your hand first, sir. Go ahead.
Kind of piggybacking off that last question. You mentioned AR, VR, and XR, based in New York currently. And I wanted to get your thoughts on like Cosm and the Sphere in terms of shared experiences. You know, Cosm has a venue here in the LA area, in Dallas. There's 3 more under construction. And it's kind of that bridge between the live venue. Like, so I've gone to see it for sports, but they have other content as well. Or when the Sphere is remaking The Wizard of Oz, and such. Like, how you see that particular like shared reality, as they call it, or that kind of new immersive experiences. Like, fundamentally changing what we expect and like how, you know, like for special events, like yeah, you might, you know, a special game like let's say like the ALCS or whatever, something like that, you might go. Maybe not for the regular Dodgers versus Angels, something like that. But I guess I'm just curious your thoughts on like that future technology as it potentially scales like nationally and potentially internationally, and like consumer expectations both for the shared experience but also the at-home experience.
Yeah. Well, first of all, full disclosure, got a lot of friends who work for Sphere. I love it. I love it. My only, I guess, I don't want to call it concern, but my only thing I think about is the fact of can it scale? Because it's such an expensive infrastructure, but the experience in itself is amazing. And yes, I can't wait to go see the Wizard of Oz there. I actually made a suggestion to them that they should have done the Wiz at the same time and ran them back to back, because that would have been really like for me. I would have been like, okay, I'm first day, I'm there. You know, I'm easing on down the road. But I think that in itself is probably one of the things that will bring people back for that collective experience, where theaters are still struggling to get them there. If we start to do sort of, theatrical performances in, the Sphere or in Cosmo or in that particular manner, surrounding people with the actual, content of the movie and the film itself, I think we would see a huge spike in in-person attendance. Yeah, I love those events. I love those environments. They're great.
I think The Wizard of Oz is a great example for it as well, because everybody sort of panned it at first before it came out as like, oh, they're just using AI to redo something that's already there. And then a month later, the stories were, oh, 100-year-old movie is on track to make $1 billion this year. and that's a very different story.
Take my money.
Yeah. I mean, they are literally selling it out and looking for new ways. So I have to believe in a world where we have 100 years of archive of media, there's going to be a lot of retelling of stories for those kinds of event spaces, and that's a separate one from it's not appointment viewing, it's destination viewing of bringing people back into a physical space to do it.
Oh man, just think about seeing the birds.
Yeah.
Seeing the birds or seeing stormy weather, and the way that stormy weather was done was very much like shooting a stage play. But when you look at the enhanced versions that they've done of the content, it's amazing to watch all those musical sequences.
Yeah.
You put something like that into that space. That's the next step. That's the next step. That and then the glasses, and sort of people being able to see the world and see, some other content around it. I think those are two things that are going to drive a lot of experimentation.
Very good. What was your question?
I have a question about broadcast television station licenses.
Okay.
So are we still, so I've been thinking about this, with streaming, obviously a whole different underlying legal consumer paying model versus over-the-air free broadcast television, but those have been licenses to print money for 100 years too.
Sure.
And are we just not going to need them soon? And are they going to go for more wireless spectrum or in some other use? I'm not even sure what the contractual arrangements are between the government and the station licensees, but I don't believe they're paid for. I don't know that. But I've been thinking about that, like what is going to become of those licenses and the spectrum that they occupy currently, those licensees.
So I have a couple that I will throw in.
Go ahead.
I know that obviously broadcast infrastructure is just very slowly upgrading. There is not even still a mandate to move to ATSC3 in most markets, so it's just simply stuck. As things are emerging, they are moving more into the data side of the spectrum with what they're having, because they simply aren't needing to use the broadcast space as much. I mean, they'd already, in the digital change, had sort of subdivided the spectrum and were hosting a lot of different channels, whether it was a Spanish version of everything or literally just public access in a different way. But I think as they move into the data space, because that is much more locational than a streaming effort or something that you would watch online, would be, that'll bring in a localized advertising market that is sort of returns to that space in some way, but it won't necessarily be a visual medium. It's going to be data driven off of the phones and devices that we have, and our cars in many cases as it moves. So I know that there's tests in markets around that kind of space, but a lot of the spectrum use is sort of merging into that data cast side of the business and less around the broadcast side that I see. What about you?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I ran production technology for PBS nationally for 10 years. And the key to what they were doing as far as over the air was reaching audiences that can't be reached with all of the other mechanisms. Some of that can go away now because we have low orbiting satellites that can actually do a lot of that work and so forth. However, what a lot of people don't know is that a lot of those stations, the emergency broadcast system, in order for us to actually alert the nation to certain things that could be harmful, that is all tied into a lot of those licenses. So that part of things really needs to stay in place because that is the only way that we can actually get emergency messaging out. Yes, people like to talk about cellular. Cellular is not as reliable as those satellites and that distribution and actually being able to hit it on those homes. So having a combination of both cellular and the existing sort of satellite transmission system is where you'll probably start to see some of that go. The other thing is, as Andy was saying, you will see them actually using that spectrum for other things. We've already seen them starting to cut away at it and chip away at it. I did location sound earlier in my career on the film side. I have wireless mics that I'm not supposed to use anymore, because they took away that spectrum. They didn't tell me, and they didn't, compensate me for taking away my ability to use stuff that I had already invested in. They did. So yeah, I see that being more of the thing, but I do see that there's going to be a decrease. I think a decrease, especially on sort of on the network side. You'll probably see a decrease in that particular space, and they'll start to see more regional channels instead of local.
Awesome. Well, Renard, thank you again for the time. I think we're right at the top of the hour, so we better get out of here before they kick us out.
Okay, cool.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks so much for coming.